Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. Well, President Marcos's approval ratings have also taken a hit from the flood control scam, plunging to a new low in the latest survey by research firm WR Numero. And catch our conversation with Mexico's ambassador to the Philippines, Daniel Hernandez Joseph, on the growing bilateral relations between the two countries. Well, another day, another downgrade. This time, the OECD has slashed its projection for the Philippines as the flood control scandal continues to weigh on economic activity. In its latest outlook, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development cut its 2025 growth forecast to 4.7% from its early estimate of 5.6%. It also downgraded projections for 2026 and 2027 to 5.1 and 5.8% respectively. These all fall short of the government's targets through to 2028. OECD economist Cyril Schwilnus said the estimates assume the scandal is resolved quickly and that procurement becomes more transparent. But he warned that it is unclear how soon public investment and business confidence will recover. So the biggest downside risks are that stricter corruption controls may slow public spending longer than expected, while weak global demand could limit export gains. Still, the OECD says the Philippines will be the fourth fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia this year, following Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. It noted that recent foreign investment liberalization could help draw in more capital as borrowing costs ease and public projects restart. The OECD said the Philippines could also strengthen competition by simplifying and harmonizing regulations in the energy, telco, and transport sectors. Speaking of the flood control scam, ICI Commissioner Rogelio Babes Singson showed up to the Commission's office this morning after having caused a stir with his resignation. Well, he didn't take questions from reporters, and there was no word either whether Malacanang has accepted his resignation, which is effective December 12. Chair Andres Reyes Jr. said that Singson is stepping down due to his age and the stressful nature of the work. But in an interview with her sister program StoryCon, Congressman Edgar Erices said Singson was frustrated about the Commission's limited powers. Erices said Singson texted him and complained of Malacanang's refusal to certify as urgent the congressional bill that would grant subpoena and contempt powers to the ICI.
The ICI is dead. Yung text message niya, sabi niya sa akin, why would I risk my life and my family just to solve Malacanang's problem?
Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon, however, offered a different explanation. Dizon said Singson wants to shift his technical expertise back to helping implement the DPWH's River System Master Plan, a project that he started years ago.
Sa akin, gusto niyang tulungan si Presidente sa pag-implement nung 18 major river system master plan, no, for flood mitigation na sinimulan niya nung siya ay DPWH Secretary na unfortunately hindi na implement. No, so specifically sinabi din niya alam ko sa ating Pangulo, he manifested his full support to the to what the President wants to do and to what DPWH wants to do.
Meanwhile, the Sandigan Bayan has approved the Ombudsman's request to combine two cases against fugitive ex-Congressman Zaldi Ko and several DPWH officials over the alleged multi-million flood control scam in Oriental Mindoro. The court said that the graft and malversation cases will undergo a joint trial as they come from the same facts and evidence. Well, the numbers tell a sobering story. The flood control scam has not been kind to President Marcos's approval ratings, while VP Sara Duterte's numbers have held steady. The latest survey published by WR Numero, conducted from November 21 to 28, found that public satisfaction for the president has dropped to a new low, with only 21% saying they think he's done very well. 47% say otherwise, or in Tagalog, which was the language that the survey used, hindi mahusay. 32% said they weren't sure about his performance or hindi sigurado. Now, this chart extrapolates the satisfaction over dissatisfaction ratings over the course of 1 year and gives us the clearest picture yet of public sentiment on the president. As you can see, the red line showing dissatisfaction shot up in the last 3 months, coinciding, of course, with the flood control scam being exposed. His blue line, or public satisfaction ratings, have in that same period dropped significantly. Political scientist Dr. Cathy Yang, who's an advisor to WR Numero, said Marcos lost momentum and political capital when he was perceived as slowing down and dribbling the case.
In the beginning, there were a lot of goodwill, and there were a lot of people who was hoping that the president would be resolute in his approach to the issue of the flood control mess. But what happened after that? That he suddenly slowed down. And then all the key personalities, rightly or wrongly, started dropping off his anti-corruption campaign, starting with, of course, Mayor Benjamin Magalong. No? It appears that because of the long delay and the long process that happened in between, people got the impression that the administration is just dribbling. They started naming names, starting building cases against some individuals, but these are not the big fishes that the administration was bragging they would put into jail before Christmas.
Now, in contrast, Vice President Sara Duterte's numbers have held steady, with 43% approving of her performance. Only 23% said they didn't approve, while 34% said they weren't sure. Looking at the same line chart for her, we can see that Duterte's dissatisfaction numbers have leveled off, staying more or less within the 20s for more than a year now. Her approval ratings, the blue line, have also been on the decline, but at a much more modest pace. And as recent as April 2025, she still managed to lock in 50% positive ratings. In other news, the Finance and Socio-Economic Planning Departments reiterated their support to amend the economic provisions of the 1987 Constitution. DepDev Assistant Director Judith Conora said that at a House hearing yesterday that the charter has hampered foreign capital inflows, resulting in underdeveloped industries. The Constitution requires at least 60% Filipino ownership on certain enterprises like public utilities. In 2023, the Philippines ranked 4th among ASEAN nations in terms of foreign direct investments, far behind Singapore, Indonesia, and Vietnam. That year, Manila generated just $8.9 billion in FDI, a decline of 7% from the previous year off the back of falling investments from major industries. But of course, amending the Constitution has been a futile endeavor for many years now, with its most recent attempt in 2024 ending in controversy. It ended with House lawmakers being accused of speeding up a people's initiative by handing out money in exchange for signatures. But DepDev official Janice Utanes told the House that removing the ownership cap doesn't magically solve the problems surrounding the country's investment climate. She said that there must be broad reforms in institutional support to draw in sizable foreign capital. Well, today on Diplomat's Corner, we turn our attention to a cultural partnership built on centuries of shared history. Mexico and the Philippines are deepening cultural cooperation, highlighted by several upcoming events. And joining us today to talk about that is Mexico's ambassador to the Philippines, Ambassador Daniel Hernandez Joseph. Ambassador, good morning. Thanks for being with us here in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, before we get into the cultural events that are coming up, and they're all exciting, I wanted to talk about, because we were just talking about foreign capital and the other news, I wanted to talk about the state of economic and investment relations between the Philippines and Mexico. Give us a better sense of where we're at.
Well, I think the most important story is an investment where the Philippines is making very important investments in Mexico in port management, in spirits, in microtechnology, as well as some investments from Mexico in the Philippines in feed, animal feed. But there's also a story there with trade where I think the important aspect is how we connect and we become part of chains of production, chains of distribution between Asia and the Americas. Mexico is the first purchaser of Filipino products in Latin America.
That's right. I recently found out we export a lot of electronic products, semiconductor chips and stuff like that.
We are a major world producer of automobiles, mostly light automobiles, although some heavy ones as well, and of electrodomestics. All of these items require electronic components.
Right.
All of them require chips, and those sometimes are purchased from countries like the Philippines.
Right. But it's interesting, though, that there is more Philippines to Mexico trade than there is the other way around.
Yes, but we're working on that. In fact, right now as we speak, there is a trade delegation, actually an official delegation from the Office of the Secretary of Agriculture of the Philippines in Mexico, which we would hope will open up the market so we can export pork and beef to the Philippines.
That's going to be a new frontier entirely, agriculture, because traditionally it's been electronics, motor vehicle parts, and such things, right? How do you see, so when you look at goods trade, and I think I have the chart for that, if I could just pull that up. Goods trade in 2023 came up to, I think that's bilateral, $1.3 billion. We exported just a little over 906 million, importing $352 million. When you look at this picture, what do you think about? Is there room for growth here?
Yeah, of course, there's a lot of room for growth. If you think of it, our total trade worldwide is almost $800 billion.
That's true.
So when you,
Mexico is a powerhouse.
In a sense,
yeah.
when we have trade imbalance within a 1 billion, the important thing is not so much whether there's a balance or imbalance, is how it's contributing to the growth and development of the economies of both countries, and how it's connecting, like I mentioned, with chains of production and chains of distribution, strengthening the ties. I think Philippines should be, because of our historical connection in trade, should be the natural
partner.
Yeah, the natural doorway for, in both directions, for us to connect with Asia and for the Philippines to connect with the Americas.
Right, because Mexico would be a natural jumping off point for the rest of the Latin American market, while the Philippines would be the same for the ASEAN market. Within the Philippines context, what do you think needs to happen in order to get there, in order for us to achieve more?
Well, I think it's both countries that need to work together. There's been a proposal on the Philippine side to establish a bilateral committee on economic committee, which I think should be an important starting point, because that means that all the stakeholders of both countries would get together and see a bit of where we are and where the reality of trade demands and opportunities actually exist. And that's something that we need to work together on. We're hoping that this will happen in 2026. We will begin actually sitting down and saying, okay, this is where we're at, this is what we've achieved. Where do we go from here now? Given also that there are important shifts in the world in how trade is happening, to say the least. And these changes actually are opportunities.
Right.
They actually open opportunities. And we should see them from that perspective. And I believe there are many between our two countries.
I laugh because that's such a diplomatic way of saying it. Because I'm not a diplomat, I can say it more bluntly, which is that the U.S. has forced all of us to redraw our trade partnerships. And you're absolutely right. For the Philippines, for example, where the government is scrambling to look for other trading partners, for example, further afield from ASEAN, looking at Latin America and all of that. Mexico's also had to bear the brunt of the U.S. tariffs, right? But the economy is still pretty sound. What lessons do we take away from that?
First of all, we have a free trade agreement with the U.S. and Canada. We're partnered. So when the U.S. imposed tariffs on us, those tariffs apply only to the products that are not part or not contemplated in the bilateral agreement. So at the end of the day, we have been one of the least impacted countries because we are a partner of the U.S. But more important than that, again, I am sorry I come back to chains of production and chains of distribution, because when a car is made in North America, it has crossed the border between U.S., Mexico, and Canada on an average 7 times in parts and pieces
Right,
to
just
become
putting
a
it
car.
together, right.
And therefore, it's more, our relationship is more about what we build and sell together than what we build and sell to each other. It needs to be seen from a totally different perspective. In that sense, we strengthen each other, the 3 countries. So the bonds, the economic bonds between Mexico, U.S., and Canada, I believe, are unbreakable.
Absolutely, and of course, geographically, you can't change anything, right? Let's talk about the defense arena, because as you know, the Philippines has been rallying what they call like-minded countries to try to, as a way to counter China's aggression in this part of the world. It's been trying to work out a lot of visiting forces agreements or similar deals with other like-minded, what they call like-minded countries. Is Mexico part of that conversation?
We're beginning to have some conversations specifically with the Philippines on that. Traditionally, on defense issues, Mexico has been more closed to international cooperation. It's only in the last couple of decades, for example, that we participate in United Nations peacekeeping forces. Our army left Mexican territory for the first time ever to give assistance to the flooding that happened because of a hurricane in the United States, in New Orleans. And that was the first time we left, but it was for humanitarian assistance. So it's just recent that we've had cooperation, mostly training between mostly with the United States, and we're beginning to open up to that possibility. So I understand there are conversations happening with the Philippines in that direction.
Right. It's still very early days.
Very
but in
early
general,
stage.
Mexico is always on the peacekeeping side.
Right.
Okay, so now let's talk about the cultural relations. There are a few events coming up. Talk us through that.
Well, the most exciting thing is that today, actually, if you think of the time change, the 3rd of December in Mexico, we inaugurated the exhibit Somos Pacifico. It's probably one of the largest exhibits on the Manila-Acapulco galleon that we've had. But the most important part of this exhibit is that it is the first time that an Asian perspective on the galleon trade is presented to Mexico. It's a different narrative than what we are accustomed to giving ourselves and to presenting when speaking of the galleon. And I think this will open minds, change views, change perspectives about how the world trade became globalized and how the ones that did it were Mexico and the Philippines.
Right, right. So it brings a spotlight onto the role that the Philippines and the rest of Asia played in opening up the global trade.
Right, and
For
this
the
was
first time ever.
This exhibit was based on an exhibit that was presented in the Asian Civilizations Museum in Singapore. It was curated by the curators at the Asian Civilizations Museum. It took several years, more than 5 in the making, precisely to construct what would be the narrative of the exhibit and how the story of how this trade happened is presented.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key. That's the most exciting thing. It was inaugurated by the president of Singapore.
So it's great that now everybody who goes to that exhibit will get to see the Asian perspective, but is there a chance it could come here? We could bring
I hope so.
that
That's going to depend on we can get the financing here. But I will have to underline that there was a lot of support from the Philippines and from Philippine institutions for this exhibit to be presented in Mexico. That
to get the details
but
right.
Yeah. So that support, I would hope, will materialize into having the exhibit being shown here.
Because that would be very meaningful for a lot of people to be able to see visually, the Philippines' role back then. 72 years of diplomatic relations the Philippines and Mexico have had. What is next for this partnership? What is next for this bilateral relation?
Well, we already mentioned the issue of trade. I think we need to expand in what we can do together multilaterally. Yeah. Again, because of the newer challenges, world politics, world trade is changing. So I think this is a time for us to engage in a deeper conversation, because we're both countries that strongly and deeply believe in a rules-based world order, and we deeply believe in multilateralism. So I think there's a tremendous amount of space for cooperation in that field.
And also, we have very deep cultural ties. Of course, there's the Spanish colonial influence, but also Mexico and the Philippines, the people of Mexico and the Philippines share such deep cultural affinities.
That would be a day for a whole other program, because so much of our food in Mexico comes from the Philippines, some of
And
the
vice
food
versa,
here,
yeah.
and vice versa, the clothing, the ways of doing things, the ways of perceiving time and space, the ways of all of these which are elements
The
of a
family
culture.
ties.
Family
Yeah.
ties, all of the,
The
elements that
values.
make culture and make identity. We don't realize in Mexico or in the Philippines how much of our own identity comes from each other's views and perspective of the world. So yes, we're brothers and sisters, we're cousins in that sense.
I love how you put it. You have been here 2.5 years. What do you
Correct.
want to achieve for the rest of your time here? What's the big goal?
The main goal is, as I mentioned, the economic one, is to establish the Bilateral Economic Council. I think that's key. To have a dialogue on reopening opportunities for investment, so that we have more investment from Mexico here, so that we have perhaps a more balanced trade, but more than that, a larger trade between the two countries, and that we put more cement into our cultural relations. I think those are the main goals. There's some very specific projects that sometimes don't sound exciting, like a cooperation on paleography with the National Archive of the Philippines. But what this does is this helps each other understand our history better, and that's key to how the peoples of both countries understand their own identities.
And deepening the relations. Yeah. Oh, I would be remiss if I don't mention the name of the exhibit, Somos Pacifico.
Somos Pacifico.
Which means?
We are Pacific.
We are Pacific.
In fact, I borrowed this from a colleague, ambassador in Asia, says we seem to speak of this part of the world as the Far East, but from the Mexican perspective, this is our near west.
Oh, I like that. It's not the Far East, it's the near west.
If you go west from Mexico,
that's right.
There's
it's
nothing
close
but
enough.
ocean and this area of the world.
And then,
so you're our neighbors.
And then also, there is an exhibit coming to the Mall of Asia next year.
Well, there's no, it's not an exhibit. It's going to be a permanent museum.
Oh, okay.
That will be Museo del Galeón, which we're hoping that in 2026 will open. It will have a life-size representation of the galleon based on one specific galleon. So I would encourage people to keep their eyes open for the opening of the exhibit and visit it when it is.
Absolutely. I, for one, am very excited to see it with my kids. Thank you so much. We'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Ambassador Daniel Hernandez Joseph from the Mexican Embassy. We're going to take a very quick break, but a deep look at the markets when we return. Plus, the government is planning to raise international bond sales next year. Stay with us here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Regina Lay. In the markets, the government is planning to raise international bond sales by more than 60% next year as it seeks financing in an economy slowed by the ongoing corruption scandal. National Treasurer Sharon Almanza told Bloomberg that overall borrowings for 2026 will only be slightly higher than this year, but the share coming from overseas will rise to 25% from 19% as part of the government's debt management strategy. She said banks will soon be tapped to arrange the first issuance, which could roll out as early as the first quarter, and they include climate and social bonds. The move comes as the flood control corruption scandal fuels public protests and pressure on the Marcos administration to deliver reforms. Bloomberg earlier reported that major asset managers are reassessing their exposure to Philippine sustainability bonds over concerns that they may have inadvertently funded projects now under investigation. In response, the Treasury said proceeds will be reallocated and fully disclosed if the investigation confirms any legal or procurement violations. Almanza also said the administration will have to communicate properly so that investors get some comfort. Let's take a quick look now at the markets. U.S. benchmarks rising this Wednesday, I believe, shrugging off a drop in private payrolls with a Fed rate cut now again on the horizon. There you have it. Everyone's in the green. The Dow climbed by 0.8%, S&P 500 by a third, and the Nasdaq advancing by just almost 0.2%. U.S. 10-year Treasury yields ticking down to just 4.071%, while gold prices jumping again, $4,254 per troy ounce. U.S. futures, if you take a look at them, moving marginally higher with the Dow, S&P, and Nasdaq all rising by, well, more or less flattish, but rising by just almost 0.8%. But let's see how the Asian markets are responding to that. They are looking, well, mixed in the first hour of trading this Thursday. Japan's Nikkei 225 up by almost 8%, but the South Korea's Kospi has fallen by almost the same amount, and Australia's ASX 200 up by just more or less flattish at this point. Let's take a check now on our own markets. The PSEI opening Thursday by about 0.1%, just sitting at 5915.62. There you have it. Profit taking has caused the markets to tumble on Wednesday by nearly 1.5%, with investor sentiment still subdued in the absence of positive catalysts. But the odds for a rate hike on December 12th, when the BSP meets next, are rising after growth disappointed in the third quarter. The broader all-shares index also sliding by 0.33%, with sectoral gauges all in the red except for mining and oil. The Philippine peso opening a tad weaker at 58.95 to the dollar. The peso slid to a two-week low yesterday, closing at 58.92 against the greenback. Again, due to comments from the BSP that the weak growth outlook may lead to another rate cut. The expectations are that they might cut on December 11 when they meet next, and reduce it by 25 basis points once again, which would be the fourth time in a row. And then again, 10-year government bond yields ticking down to 5.92% from the previous close of 5.94, so more or less same. There you have it. That's it for Money Talks. I'm Regina Lay. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. Kapatid, we are One News all sides all the time. Thanks for watching. Have a great day ahead.
Very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you as well to Sinfonia Filipinas Orchestra and Cameron Corps Mandela. What a wonderful evening it is, dear partners. OTG Mobile Bar, APH,